After the wedding, only a year had passed when my husband left for a long work assignment in South Korea. We lived in a small town called Mill Creek, Pennsylvania, in his parents' old house. Quiet, wooden, filled with framed family photos on every wall. His father stayed with me, Mr. Alexander Miles. Everyone called him Alex, but to me, at first, he was always Mr. Miles. He looked a little over 60, but carried himself stronger than many men in their 30s. Broad shoulders, neatly trimmed silver hair, that old-fashioned courtesy you almost never see anymore. At first, I felt shy around him. Living under one roof with another man, even an older one, felt strange. I tried to be careful, proper, distant. But over time, that awkwardness faded. He turned out to be kind, gentle, patient, with a quiet sense of humor and a way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered. In the mornings, I put on a light linen dress, tied the belt around my waist, twisted my hair into a low bun, and moved quietly around the kitchen. Mr. Miles sat at the table, a warm heating pad on his stomach, watching me with a soft, grateful smile. Sometimes he told me where to find things. Sometimes he just sat quietly while I washed dishes, stirred the coffee, wiped the counter. One day, while I stood at the sink, he called gently, "Maddie, will you help me later, like yesterday?" I knew exactly what he meant. He had type 2 diabetes, and the doctor insisted on strict blood sugar checks, morning, after meals, before bed, sometimes 15 times a day. At first, he felt embarrassed to ask for help, but soon we fell into a rhythm, almost a ritual. I took out the meter, cleaned his fingertip with alcohol, pressed the lancet cap lightly to his skin. He always closed his eyes. I did too. It felt oddly intimate, too intimate for a simple medical task. One evening, he held my wrists just a moment longer than necessary. Warm, soft, lingering. I pretended not to notice, but I did. That night, he called me again. He sat in his armchair, and I dropped to my knee so I could reach his hand comfortably. His palm was warm, dry, steady. And when I looked up, he was watching me, not just my hands, my face, the thin straps of my nightgown, the line of my neck. "You look like an angel, Maddie," he whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." The air between us changed, heavy, electric, like the sky before a storm. The next day, everything repeated. The measurements, the quiet jokes, the shared glances. Only now he called more often, sometimes even at night. I was tired, but I couldn't say no. He praised me for my patience, my gentleness, my kind hands. And sometimes, before seeing him, I found myself choosing a dress with a deeper neckline or slipping on thin stockings under my robe. Why? Maybe loneliness, maybe the desire to feel seen again. One morning, I stepped out of the shower, wrapped in a towel, and saw him standing in the doorway. He froze. His gaze slid down my wet neck, across the towel barely clinging to my chest. "I'm sorry," he breathed. "I didn't know you weren't dressed." I smiled reflexively. "It's fine, really. You didn't mean to." But that moment shifted everything. A week passed. He became quieter, more thoughtful. Even during sugar checks, he seemed embarrassed, as if afraid to cross an invisible line. "Maddie," he said one evening, "maybe tonight we skip the late check?" "Why? You need it." "I just want you to rest. You look tired." I was tired, but the suggestion stung unexpectedly. Did he not want me touching him? Not want me close? The next day, I deliberately chose a dress with a modest neckline, but a fitted waist. I left my hair down. He once mentioned he liked that. When I brought him the meter, he stared a moment too long at my hair, my collarbone, my wrist. "You look beautiful today, Maddie," he said. "Thank you," I replied too quickly. When I sat beside him, he placed his hand on my waist, gently, warmly, just to steady me as he explained, but his fingers moved slightly, soft, exploring. My heart hammered. The meter beeped. Numbers were normal. I wasn't. That night, I could not sleep. His touch haunted me. The next day, a package arrived from my husband. A note. "Maddie, for you, my goddess." And inside, red lace lingerie. Not the kind you wear on a normal night in a quiet Pennsylvania town. A shiver ran through me. I hid it in the closet, but the thought remained. If I wore it, would he notice? Who he was, I refused to admit, yet that night I put it on under my robe. For myself, I told my reflection, to feel like a woman again. When Mr. Miles called for the evening check, I walked slowly. He was in pajamas, neatly combed, a little tired, but handsome in a quiet, aging way. I leaned down, the rope falling slightly open. His eyes flickered. He turned away sharply, gripped the armrests. "Maddie," he whispered, "if I ask you to leave, would you?" "No," I breathed. "I'll stay, if you want me to." He said nothing, then placed his hand on my shoulder, carefully, reverently, as if afraid I might break. "I don't dare," he said, "but I'm not blind." I covered his hand with mine. Nothing happened, no kiss, no forbidden touch, just breath and trembling, and a silence so full it felt alive. But everything changed that night. Fall arrived. Fog wrapped the neighborhood. Leaves fell in golden ribbons down the walkway. I swept them every afternoon. Mr. Miles began coming outside with me, sometimes sweeping, sometimes just watching from the doorway. Our silences grew heavier, fuller, almost tender. One evening, he handed me his coat. "You'll catch cold," he said, tying the belt around my waist. His hands lingered far too long. His eyes, warm, hungry, sad. That night, I dreamed of the red lace lingerie and his gray cardigan on my shoulders. In the dream, I opened the cardigan, and he stood behind me, watching, and I didn't hide. I woke trembling. Days later, I walked into his room with fresh towels. He stood shirtless, changing a bandage. He didn't have time to cover himself. I stepped closer without thinking. "Show me where the shot goes," I whispered. "Maddie," he said softly, but he didn't stop me. His skin was warm under my fingers. My breath caught in my throat. He turned toward me. We were too close, much too close. For a heartbeat, we simply breathed together, in one space, one warmth, one danger. Finally, I stepped back, barely. The line had been crossed anyway. Then came the storm. Wind shook the house. Lightning cracked the sky. The power went out. "Probably the breaker again," he muttered. "I'll check." "I'm coming with you. I have a flashlight." We went to the basement. It smelled of damp wood. He worked on the breaker while I held the light. The floor was slick. I slipped. He caught me, one arm around my waist, pulling me against his chest. My back pressed to his heartbeat. The flashlight beam trembled over my hips, my dress, the shape of my thighs. He didn't let go. Neither did I. "Maddie," he whispered into my hair, "we can't." But he didn't release me, and I didn't step away. When the power snapped back on, we jumped apart, pretending nothing had happened, knowing everything had. The next evening, my husband called. "I'm coming home," he said, "sooner than planned. In 3 days." My hands went cold. At dinner, I told Mr. Miles. He stared out the window. "I knew this day would come," he said quietly. "Just didn't expect it to feel like this." I set my hand on his shoulder. He covered it with his own. His palm trembled. "We didn't do anything wrong," I whispered, but even I didn't believe it. "Sometimes," he said, "nothing is the most dangerous thing of all." I sank to the floor beside him, where I always sat during his injections, only this time there was no meter. He stroked my hair, slowly, as though memorizing the shape of goodbye.